Good morning, guys. Let's get into our reading lesson for the day. I know we've already learned a lot about sentences and we learned a lot about our short vowels already today. So let's look at the reading stories that we're going to use today to learn some reading skills. The first book we're going to be looking at this week is called Big Red Lollipop. Oops. And then we're also going to read My Rotten Red-Headed Older Brother. Both of those stories we're going to be talking about different cultures and realistic fiction. And we're going to talk about those things right now so you know some stuff about cultures and you know about realistic fiction. All right, the first thing about cultures. Culture is kind of a hard word, but culture just means it's the things that people like to do. It's the kind of clothes they wear. It's the food that they eat. It's the language they speak, the kind of church they might go to. And as you can imagine, people that live in different countries or different places, they're going to have different cultures. I mean, think about that. You know people in China. Think about them. They're going to look different than us. Sometimes they're going to dress different. They definitely talk different than us. They also have different things that they like to do, different food that they like to eat than we do. It's the same thing for people maybe that live in Mexico. They look different than us. They might wear different clothes. They definitely talk different than us. They like to eat different food. The kids might even like to play different games than we do. And that's your culture. So your culture kind of depends on where you live. And if you live in different places, you might have a different culture. And culture just means the kind of clothes you wear, the food that you eat, the things that you like to do, and the way that you talk. That's your culture. So the first thing we're going to talk about with culture is, in America, when you meet somebody new, because, we live in America. In America, we like to shake hands. That's what we do when we meet somebody new. I'm sure you've seen people shake hands before. Yeah, sometimes at church even you go around, you might have a handshake at church. That's just something we'd like to do in America. But did you know that if you live in a different country and you have a different culture, you might do different things? People that live in Japan or China, they like to bow to each other instead of shaking hands. You've probably seen that in movie or TV, right? Yeah. And then people in like France, and it also says Belgium and Switzerland and Germany, Russia, Spain, and the Netherlands, which are all countries across the ocean in Europe, they like to kiss each other on the cheeks when they meet each other. I know, kind of gross, right? Yeah, my kids are always like, "Ew, I'm never going to France." And that's okay. But that's just what they like to do. We shake hands is our culture. In Japan and China, they bow. If you go to France and some of these other countries, you might kiss each other on both cheeks. That's just their culture. It's the things that they like to do. And cultures are different. All right, in America, which is where we live, remember, we have an American culture. When it's your birthday, you might have a party. You'll probably have a cake. You might wear some hats. You'll get presents. You might play games. That's what we do in America for a birthday. But did you know, if you live in Mexico, not only do you have a cake and wear funny hats and play games, they like to smash the cake in your face. So that's what they do in Mexico. That's part of their culture. That's totally normal for them. On your birthday, you're going to get cake smashed in your face. But we don't normally do that. I've never, ever had cake smashed in my face on my birthday because I don't live in Mexico. It's not part of our culture. But it's totally normal in Mexico. All right, and in America, it's normal on Easter. It's part of our culture that we have Easter egg hunts. You hide eggs and the kids go and find them. You might get Easter baskets. You can see some of these kids have their Easter baskets with them. Well, that's what we do on Easter. It's part of our culture. But in a different culture, I think it was in Norway. Norway's all the way across the ocean too. Their culture is on Easter, they like to have a big water fight and they blast each other with water all day long. That's part of their culture. Yeah, that's what they like to do. So that's definitely different than what we do. And then the last one about different cultures is, we lose teeth. That's totally normal. All kids, it doesn't matter what culture you're in, you're going to lose your teeth. But what we do with them in different cultures is different. So in America, if you lose your tooth, where do you put it? That's right. When we lose our teeth, we put it under our pillow, and the tooth fairy is supposed to come and bring us some money, right? That's what we do in America. But if you are in a different culture, you are going to, and I'm going to look that up real quick. I can't remember what culture it was. It'll only take me a second. Oh yeah, it was in Greece. Greece is all the way across the ocean too. If you're in Greece, you know what they do with their tooth when it falls out? They throw it on the roof for the tooth fairy. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. That is the part of their culture. So you can see that different cultures do different things. We're all still people, and there's lots of things that we all do the same. But we definitely, if you live in a different culture, you might do things differently than everybody else. So that was just a few things that cultures are different. And in the Big Red Lollipop, that story that we talked about, we were going to read, the little girl in the story is from Pakistan. And Pakistan is all the way across the ocean too. It's over there kind of close to Africa and Asia. And they have a different culture than we do in Pakistan. And then the other story we're going to read, My Rotten Red-Headed Older Brother, it's a story, and these people came from Russia. And Russia is all the way kind of close to Pakistan. So they're all the way in different places. So you might notice some words and the way they dress and the things that they do differently than what we do in America, because they're going to have a different culture. All right, let's get into realistic fiction. All right, both stories, The Big Red Lollipop and My Rotten Red-Headed Older Brother, are something called realistic fiction. And realistic fiction is just the kind of book that it is. There's lots of different kinds of books. I know that you know that. You've seen tons of books. And some of the books are different kinds. These two books are called realistic fiction. And if it's a realistic fiction book, this is what it is. It's going to be a made-up story. So both of our stories this week that we're going to be looking at are made up. That means they're not real. Somebody just made it up. But the things that happen in the story could be real. So it is a made-up story. They're not real people, but it's realistic. Realistic means it's almost real. So the things that you see are happening could be real. You're not going to see anybody flying, because we know that's not realistic. People don't fly. You're not going to see any talking animals, because that's not realistic. Animals don't talk. So in our story this week, there's going to be made up, of course, but you'll see things that could be really happening in real life. That's all realistic fiction means. Let's look at some other books and see if we can tell if it's realistic fiction or not. All right, Llama Llama Red Pajama. I know you've probably seen this book. You may have even read this book. Do you think Llama Llama Red Pajama would be realistic fiction? Good, good. The llama in the story talks, doesn't it? Yeah, and they even wear clothes. And look, that llama is sleeping in a bed, holding the stuffed animal, wearing pajamas. Is that realistic? Does that really happen? No. So realistic fiction, Llama Llama Red Pajama is definitely not realistic fiction. It's not. What about Super Fly Guy? I bet you all have seen some Fly Guy books. I like to read the Fly Guy books. They're funny. Would Fly Guy be realistic fiction? Good. No. In Fly Guy, they have a fly that's like a superhero sort of. He flies around and he talks and he does crazy things. Flies can't really lift up big heavy things, can they, or talk? No. So that is not realistic fiction. Well, only if they could be real do we call it realistic fiction. Remember, they're still made up, but it could be real. Let's look at the next one. Oops, I went too far. I'm going to go back just once. Let's see if I can do that. Well, I'm not seeing that. So we'll just talk about No David first. All right, No David. Could that be a realistic fiction? You may have never read No David, but it's just a story about a little boy. And David does kind of get into trouble a lot. He's all the time doing bad things. Do you think No David could be realistic fiction? I think it could. I think so, because there could really be a little boy that does bad things, couldn't there? Little boys do bad things sometimes, right? Sometimes even little girls do. So yeah, I think No David is realistic fiction. It definitely could really be a true story. There really could be a little boy named David, and he really could be bad. Like you can see right here on the cover, he's trying to tip over the goldfish. That could really happen. A boy could do that. So yeah, No David is realistic fiction. There's nothing crazy that couldn't really happen, like in Llama Llama, Red Pajama, and Fly Guy, where the animals are acting like people. That doesn't really happen. But this one could happen, so it's realistic fiction. And then our last story is Biscuit Visits the Farm. Okay. Now, I bet you've read some Biscuit books. Remember, Biscuit's just a little dog, and he has a little girl that has him, and they go on some adventures together. Like this time they're going to the farm, and it looks like he's meeting some chicks, and he's seeing some apples. Do you think the Biscuit Visits the Farm could be realistic fiction? Yeah, I think it could. I think you're right, because there really could be a dog named Biscuit, and he really could go to the farm with his owner, couldn't he? Yeah, he doesn't talk in the Biscuit stories. He doesn't wear clothes or does anything else crazy that dogs don't really do. So that could be real. There really could be a little girl that has a dog named Biscuit, and they go places together. So good. No David and Biscuit Visits the Farm are both realistic fiction. But Llama Llama, Red Pajama and Super Fly Guy are not. They're a different kind of story that we'll talk about later. But this week we're only going to be talking about realistic fiction stories. So good job. You know all about realistic fiction now. And that is the end of our lesson on realistic fiction and different cultures. Let's get ready. I'm going to do a read aloud now. I'm going to go live, and I'm going to read you Big Red Lollipop, okay? So if you have your reading book with you, that big, heavy reading book, go ahead and turn to get ready for Big Red Lollipop, and we're going to listen to it, okay? All right. I'll see you on the live one. Bye, guys.